Hello. In this presentation, I am going to refer to Unit 1, Interaction and Scaffolding Processes in the English Class. To do so, I will mention three distinct aspects in the analysis of this topic. The first one is the way in which we look at language in order to teach it. Then, I will refer to the role of formulaic language in ELT, and I will conclude by referring to the implications for teaching that we should bear in mind in times of teaching young learners. Let me turn to the first part of my presentation by referring to the ways in which we look at language in order to teach it. As a main principle, it is important to bear in mind that children learn a language by using it in an integrated way for communicative purposes. This is a key principle that will come once and again in the bibliographic references that we read. As Pinter clearly explains the role of language components when she says, vocabulary and grammar are interdependent. Fluent speakers and writers put together the component parts of the language system quickly and efficiently. To be able to do this, they need to know a large pool of vocabulary items and a long list of grammatical structures. However, it is not enough to know these in isolation. Language users also need to understand the complex interaction between vocabulary and grammar. Native speakers put words together quickly in typical combinations, and this is what makes them fluent. Such building blocks are often called chunks. So Pinter starts referring to a notion that we will develop in detail in this unit, which is the notion of chunks. And she is referring to the ways in which vocabulary and grammar are, she says, interdependent. That is, vocabulary depends on grammar, and grammar depends on vocabulary. In order to be a fluent speaker and writer, you need to be able to use both interdependently. That is, you need to know how to assemble bits of language, bits of vocabulary and grammar in interaction to make fluent combinations. Let's now listen and look at the story read out loud for you. The story Pete the Cat, I Love My White Shoes by Eric Lidwin. And as we look and listen to the story, let us bear in mind Pinter's words and try answering the following questions. The first one, in what ways do structures and vocabulary behave as units as you see them in the book? What main chunks can you identify in the story? In what ways do you think children can take advantage of the story? Then another important question is, what is the communicative aim of the story? And finally, what chunks, what bits of language do you think the children are likely to learn by listening to the story? Let's listen.
Pete the Cat was walking down the street in his brand new white shoes. Pete loved his white shoes so much, he sang this song. I love my white shoes. 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 Oh, no. Pete stepped in a large pile of strawberries. What color did it turn his shoes?
Red!
Did Pete cry?
Goodness, no! He kept walking along and singing his song.
I love my red shoes. 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 I love my red.
Oh no! Pete stepped in a large pile of blueberries. What color did it turn his shoes?
Blue!
Did Pete cry?
Goodness, no!
He kept walking along and singing his song.
I love my blue shoes. 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 I love.
Oh no! Pete stepped in a large puddle of mud. What color did it turn his shoes?
Brown!
Did Pete cry?
Goodness, no!
He kept walking along and singing his song.
I love my brown shoes. 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 I love my brown.
Oh no! Pete stepped in a bucket of water. And all the brown, and all the blue, and all the red were washed away. What color were his shoes again?
White!
But now they were wet. Did Pete cry?
Goodness, no!
He kept walking along and singing his song.
I love my wet shoes. 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 I love my wet shoes.
The moral of Pete's story is, no matter what you step in, keep walking along and singing your song, because it's all good.
The story is a clear example of the ways in which language users store and retrieve phrases as chunks, rather than taking each word in isolation. When we think of the story, several parts of it come to our minds as lexicalized items, as units that you are likely to commit to memory as such. Interactive routines such as, did Pete cry? Goodness, no! Or whole sets of words such as, I like my red shoes, I like my white shoes. Those are likely to be remembered and retrieved as chunks each time the child wants to say the story. So we know by this that vocabulary and grammar are stored together in the mental lexicon in typical combinations rather than in isolation. How is this produced? What explanations for linguistic production have been developed so far that explain this mechanism for language acquisition? According to a number of different researchers, two systems operate for language production: a rule-based system on the one hand, and a memory-based system on the other hand. Each one is responsible for different operations. While the rule-based system is in charge of constructing meanings in terms of syntactic and grammatic choices, the memory-based system is in charge of storing and committing words to memory in lexicalized ways. Both systems operate together to help people produce language. while the rule-based system is in charge of accuracy, the memory-based system is in charge of fluency. As Widdowson stated 2 decades ago, communicative competence is not just a matter of knowing rules. It is not just a matter of knowing grammar and grammatical and syntactic rules. He said, it is much more a matter of knowing a stock of partially pre-assembled patterns, formulaic frameworks, and a kit of rules, so to speak, and being able to apply the rules to make whatever adjustments are necessary according to contextual demands. So what is Widdowson suggesting? What position will we take as teachers of young learners? Which one will our stepping stone be in order to teach the language to kids? The rule-based system or the memory-based system? Will we focus on language as grammar or language as lexicalized items? Watch the video of an English teacher in class with a group of very young learners and think of a tentative answer to these questions.
We begin every class with a "How are you today" song. And the gestures that I use for the song are happy, sad, and hungry. But please feel free to make your own gestures and have fun with the song. Hey! Hello, hello, how are you today? I am happy, happy, happy. Hello, hello, how are you today? I am sad, sad, sad. Hello, hello, how are you today? I am hungry, I'm hungry today.
What are these theories that explain our descriptions of language, making a focus on the lexicalized aspects that we have mentioned before? Formulaic language is productively associated with the new generation of grammatical theories that place multi-strings at the center, rather than the periphery of our linguistic experience and language use. These are theories coming from corpus linguistics. In this section, we have talked about the ways in which we look at language in order to teach it. Let us now turn to the second part of our presentation and let us work on the role of formulaic language in ELT.